This is my new Fujifilm X100V. I recently went on a trip to Asia and took some photos with it. And overall, I've really enjoyed using this camera. So why did I buy it? I wanted a travel companion to take some film-like photos to give me kind of a nostalgic feel when I look back at them. And I wanted a quick point-and-shoot camera where I can just grab the JPEG straight out of the camera and have it look really good. And this camera did a really good job of that. So let's talk about the settings I used to get the images that I got from this camera. So I only shot with JPEG on the normal setting. I wanted to keep it as simple and light as possible. With the Fujifilm X100V, you can set custom picture settings that I found in the Fuji X weekly forums. I'll have a link to that website down below. I found 5 presets that I liked on the website and I set them in my camera. But the main one I used the most was Portra 400V2. For shutter speed, I set the minimum to 1/60th of a second. Anything slower than that would have caused blurry images as my hand is not that stable. And this is especially important because I would be on the move a lot with this camera, so I don't want to have anything slower than that shutter speed. I also have a Moment 10% Cinebloom filter on top of the lens. And I think this filter looks really good during the daytime. However, at night, I think it adds too much bloom, especially on the lights on skyscrapers. You can see an example of this in this image of the Shanghai skyscrapers. But overall, those are the settings I've been using on my Fujifilm X100V. So let's move on to talk about my workflow. So I have 3 main things that I think about when shooting with the X100V. And the first thing I look at is which custom picture setting that I want to pick for the image. And the second thing I'm thinking about is the exposure compensation for this picture setting. I've got the aperture, shutter speed, and ISO all to auto as I just don't want to think about all these settings while I'm shooting. And then I use the exposure wheel to figure out how much exposure I want in the image. This exposure compensation wheel is dependent on which custom picture setting that I'm using. Most of the custom picture settings that I found on the Fuji X Weekly forums recommends that I shoot at around +1 exposure. But my summer preset is outlier, and this one shoots at a +2, which I've noted inside the naming of the preset. And so these are the 2 main things that I think about inside the camera. And the last thing I think about when shooting with the Fuji X100V is the composition. Just because the picture settings are correct and the exposure is perfect, if the composition of the photo is not that good, then the photo is not that good. But with all 3 of these things considered, the custom picture setting, the exposure, the composition, when you combine all of these things together, you get a really good image. So after using the X100V for a little bit, what did I learn? Number 1, I think the biggest thing is that composition is super important. I do have some wiggle room with the composition in editing. I can just kind of crop it and warp it a little bit to get that feel. But having a great original composition, I think, is super important still. The second thing I learned is that standing still is very important when taking photos, especially at night when the shutter speed is at a lower speed. And I think that's just kind of a general rule of thumb. Just stand still when taking photos. Don't want to move too much. It's kind of dangerous if you move around. And the third and last thing that I learned from using the X100V is to take more photos. This camera can really be brought around anywhere and no one really thinks too much about it. It's not as intimidating to others as other cameras with bigger lenses and bigger bodies. It's more of just a point and shoot, grab and go type of camera. So looking back at my trip to Asia, I do wish I shot more photos with it. If I shot more photos, I would have had even more photos to look back at. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. I'll play a couple more of my favorite photos to end off the video. But other than that, I'll see y'all in the next video. Testing. 1, 2, 3. What's up, YouTube? So I have 3 main things that I look about. So I have 3 main things that